and welcome to Asian Pacific America. I'm Robert Honda, your host for our show here on NBC Bay Area and Cozy TV. One of the real pleasures in launching this program is being able to give other journalists, my co-workers, an opportunity to tell their own personal stories that we believe are important for the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. Today, NBC Bay Area's Vicky Nguyen joins us to talk about the upcoming 40th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, but just as important, her own family story of their journey here to America. Then we showcased the TED exhibit at the Children's Discovery Museum in San Jose. We had the coordinators on our show last month, just prior to the opening of Voyage to Vietnam, celebrating the TED Festival. Now it's about to go underway, and we'll give you a close-up look. And we will also highlight the Indonesian community and its upcoming bazaar next week in Berkeley, as well as Indonesia Day being held in San Francisco this summer. We'll have a live performance of music and dance in our studio a little later on. Well, joining me right now is a familiar face in the Bay Area, our award-winning investigative reporter from NBC Bay Area, Vicky Nguyen. She is working on a series of reports she'll do for us in May during Asian Pacific American Month, compelling stories that include her own family's flight to freedom from war-torn Vietnam. She gives us an early look at that project today to go with the 40th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. Vicky, welcome to the show.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Robert.
Well, first of all, let's start with the anniversary itself. How is that being treated? How are people reacting to that, not only in Vietnam, but also here in America?
It's a very interesting question because in Vietnam, Vietnamese people see this as the American war, and it's 40 years ago. It is a distant part of the history, and they're much more forward-focused and focused on what's going on today in their lives, with their families, with what's happening in present day. I think it is more of a meaningful anniversary commemorated by Vietnamese American immigrants, because for many of us, my family included, it really marks the end of their time in their motherland, in their mother country, before the communist regime took over. And so for people who fled Vietnam after the fall of Saigon and came to America looking for freedom and a better life, when you have an anniversary like this, you look back and you see these very powerful images of what it was like, the chaos in Vietnam at the end of the war when all of this happened. And so it may have a stronger significance and meaning to the folks who left their own country after the war ended.
It's interesting, and of course, because their lives changed so much, it's a marking point for a beginning rather than an ending for a lot of the people here, huh?
That's a perfect way of putting it.
Now, give me an idea here in terms of your own family's journey. We were talking about that, as well as their journey to freedom. Tell us a little bit about not only your family's, adventure and what they had to go through, but also your journey in trying to tell that story.
Yes, well, like so many folks who live here in the Silicon Valley, our story is not so unique, right? San Jose is actually home to the second largest concentration of Vietnamese people outside of Vietnam. Some people don't know that, but many of us are here because we escaped the country, many as boat people, and that is the story of my family. And when I say boat people, I think a lot of folks know exactly what I'm talking about. We escaped the country in the middle of the night and were taken by a fisherman's boat to a refugee camp in Malaysia. That's where my family stayed for 8 months until they were sponsored to the United States by basically strangers who were kind enough to welcome us to the shores of America. My mother had worked for Holt International Adoption Agency when she was in Saigon, before the fall of Saigon. And she wrote a letter when she was on the refugee camp asking Holt to sponsor our family here. And so they, along with the help of some churches in Oregon, made it happen. And so here we are, 35 years later for me. I was about 1.5 when we arrived in the U.S. in Oregon. That's my parents reuniting with Dawn and Winnell Ware. They're a couple who live in Oregon, a small town called Brownsville, just outside of Eugene, and they're going over photos. I've not really met these people since I was a child. So for me to be able to go back, find them, and thank them in person and tell them that what we have in our lives today in America wouldn't have been possible without their generosity. It was a tremendously fulfilling experience. And this is Dean Hale, who is from Holt International. That's Cindy. We went to the new offices of Holt. So much has changed for everyone's lives in 35 years. They couldn't believe I was there with cameras and, a photographer and asking them a bunch of questions. The last they saw me, I was a little baby, celebrating a 2-year-old birthday in the office because I didn't have any friends, and they made some birthday cakes for me. So it was just the kindness of strangers and the spirit of these people, just amazing. And we're so excited to have the opportunity to chronicle that experience and that journey on your show in May.
Now, we will be talking about that later on, but did they talk to you a little bit about why they did what they did? It was a very volatile time, and to do what they did was kind of an extraordinary act. Did they talk at all about what made them decide to respond to the letter?
Yes, absolutely. It was extraordinary. And we think about our lives in busy Silicon Valley, and, you know, who can have time to sponsor refugees from Vietnam that they've never met, that they don't know anything about? The only thing I can tell you about it is they felt they had to. They felt they read that letter, and my mother had worked for the International Adoption Agency there, Holt, and knowing the dire situation our family was in a refugee camp, they said, we're going to make this happen. You know, someone's going to donate a 9-inch TV, someone else is going to find fish sauce. Where do you find fish sauce in 1980 in little, you know, Oregon? But they made it happen. They got rice, they donated furniture, they set up an apartment. They did it because it's what you do. That's what Winnell Ware said. And Don and Winnell have a saying that, you know, a life is only worth value if you live it for someone else. Yes. That's how you measure the success and value of your life, when you know you've given back. And that is what drove them, and it is what we're so grateful for. And, you know, we hope to be able to pay it forward being here now. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit about the people who helped out the Japanese Americans who were sent to internment camps, and some people held on to their land, and so many other people lost their property. But it hadn't been for these people who took that step, their lives would have been ruined. Instead, those people helped them survive. One of the things that I remember too, though, is that the future generations, you know, you and I, we benefited from what happened with our earlier families and the earlier generations and what they did. How about for you? What are your thoughts about being part of the generation that kind of benefited from what your family went through? I think that it has always been a cornerstone of how I've lived my life, is not taking anything for granted and really trying to make the most of my opportunities. I think about what my life would have been like if my parents hadn't been brave enough to make that choice to escape their country and everything that they knew. And really it was so that I could have an education, so they could have freedom, so I would be able to be the person I was supposed to be. And so that work ethic, I think, was infused in me just by their sacrifice alone. And to kind of come full circle and be able to go back to the people who made it possible by opening the door and helping us get started once we got here, it was just so rewarding and fulfilling. And it's, you know, it is just really what drives me today. As much as they were hoping that you would benefit from it, I think you ended up doing quite a bit more, and you're sort of, in a way, a symbol of the American dream. So congratulations on that. Robert, thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing those reports next month. Great. All right. Well, coming up next, some of the festivities going on around the Tet celebrations at the Children's Discovery Museum in San Jose, so stay with us.